All right, guys, welcome back to Marlins 9, Thursday edition. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger, and today I'm joined on the podcast by one of the Marlins super fans, Loud Miami fan. How are you doing?
Living the dream over here. Marlins won 2 out of 3, a series victory we're coming off of. It's so happy, and thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Glad you're on too. And you said it, 2 out of 3 against the Tigers, first road series win of the year. Back-to-back shutouts for the first time since 2019. So definitely something to be excited about. Off day today, heading back to Miami to take on the Mets this weekend. First time we get to see this division rival. Any thoughts about facing the Mets this weekend?
Yeah, the Mets are a high payroll team. They haven't really lived up to what their spend is, but they're coming into us like we were coming into them last year. They have some playoff hopes and aspirations here. They play to win. They kicked our butts last year when they were struggling. So hopefully we've been struggling and we could do it reverse and kick theirs.
So LMF, you're one of the more identified fans, popular fans, Marlins Twitter, always at the games. And it sucks right now to be a Marlins fan. I'm not going to lie. It's a little tough. We're rebuilding. How are you kind of coping with the rebuild, and how is it affecting you on a personal level? Someone who sees the players and interacts and cares about this team so deeply.
It hurts. I've built a deep relationship with some of these players from a fan perspective.
Right.
They know me by name. They know me by Chase, not just LMF. They follow me on Twitter or other social media sites. It has been a struggle this season, coming off such a high from last year. But you roll with the punches. You roll with the waves. I miss talking to Luis Arise. I miss speaking with him. I'm happy he's doing well over in San Diego. Depending on who is here after the deadline, you move forward. Baseball is baseball, and the wheel keeps spinning. So it has affected me personally. My nights are not as fun. It's tough to get through the games, but I have to. You cheer when real fans cheer, win, lose, or draw. Of course, you can't draw in baseball.
It's all about being a diehard fan. Like, I feel it, man. It's one of those things where you look throughout my experience of being a Marlins fan, and there's been so many players like when Giancarlo Stanton was who got me into watching baseball consistently. Seeing him hit a walk-off grand slam against the Mariners and just falling in love with that team, and you get to watch Yelich and Romuto, and it was awesome. And then to see those players slowly go away, and you understand, okay, we're not making the playoffs. One day there's going to be results you're going to see on the field from these prospects, and it didn't happen. And so now it's going to happen all over again. It's tough, but like you said, we have no other choice. As Marlins fans, we're diehards, and we got to cheer on our team and watch these games, even if there's really no point to the season at this point in terms of wins and losses. Real fans are always going to watch.
And you brought up a point there of growing and watching Stanton and whatnot, and that hurt a lot. That hurt the franchise a lot because he, of course, was signed to a backloaded contract with an early out. It was kind of like Jeffrey Loria was like teasing us with his contract, knowing he was going to sell the team, knowing that we were going to get stuff back for him. Unfortunately, there were some top-rated prospects in that trade, and it just shows you that you don't need to be a top-rated prospect to be good in this game or come up. Some don't make it. Some struggle. You just saw it with Jackson Holiday with the Baltimore Orioles coming up. In reality is you need a developmental system to help these kids grow in the game as their bodies mature and the pitchers get faster in the game or throw faster in the game. So what Peter Bendix is doing, I believe in. I want to say that in the fact that he's building a development and analytics department. Now, We hope that the guys that he's traded so far, one big trade. We hope that the guy he's traded for can come up in the next couple of years and make a difference. And we'll see what happens, But we're not sure who's going to be here, who's not going to be here. So we roll with the punches.
So the way that Bendix is doing it, from my perspective, it's almost trying to emulate the Tampa Bay Rays philosophy to a T, where that is more influenced by ownership more so than the front office believing this is the only way to win. I think Bruce Sherman kind of dictated the strategy he wanted for the front office to follow. And that would be, you're not going to have a ton of money to spend. How are you going to make this work? And obviously, Bendix growing up in the Tampa Bay Rays system, he knows how to run an analytics department very well. That is his niche. And at this point, for me personally, I don't like being 100% into analytics. I never have been. I think that on watching the game, just the emotions of baseball, that matters too. But we have no choice other than to get behind him and support this organization. Because look at guys like Otto Lopez, for example. Like maybe Peter struck gold right there. So there is positive notes. But were you frustrated at any point? Like when the Luis Arias trade came out, were you frustrated at the front office? Were you frustrated that this is the direction we were going, especially after the playoffs?
No. Yes and no. I was frustrated at the timing of it. I slept on it. I took my frustration out on Bendix because I don't like being lied to. If you're just going to come out and tell me what's, as a season ticket holder, I'm the person that's giving you revenue. I don't want to be lied to where you're making me promises that are just not going to come to fruition. I apologize if my dogs bark, by the way. I have 3
No
of them.
worries.
They may bark here. So basically, I was frustrated for a little bit there. But at the end of the day, this team had nine wins. And they weren't going anywhere. It's very frustrating to that point. So, besides that, what can you do? You got to support them. That's how I look at it. I could be mad and angry, but I have to support it, and I believe in it. I believe in the Tampa Bay way, and I know that many people don't and get angry about it, but it's a winning if they can implement it. They're probably the best ran franchise by a money standpoint, and they are competitive year over year. So there's my real thoughts on it. I believe that if it can meet the promise that he's giving, then, or the promise that the Tampa Bay Rays have in place, I want my team winning 82 games a year and competing in a playoff race, because it only takes one season, like 2003 showed, one season to really catch fire and win a World Series.
A World Series, man, that would be the dream for me personally, to see a World Series. Like, I've watched the highlights, I've watched the highlights of 97, and I was 1 year old in 03. So couldn't really watch that live or remember it. But that's the goal, is a World Series. And it's going to take a while. But at the end of the day, that's the goal. That's the dream. And it makes me feel good as a fan to think about this team hopefully coming out of this rebuild on the other side, having hope, the importance of drafting and development, and looking forward to this major league, amateur draft, seeing who we get and how we can develop them with a new scouting department in place. But I kind of want to transition now into the past a little bit, if you will. What is some of your favorite memories and experiences? And we're just going to share that back and forth as being a Marlins fan. What games, what players? Like, let's hit on the positive a little bit.
Okay. So where you've grown up since 03, you said you were 1. You really didn't experience the first 5 years of the franchise going into 97. Being a fan since I was 6 years old or 7 years old when the first team made their debuts. At the time that they started or were inaugural team, my favorite player was Chuck Carr. It's just and Jazz reminds me a lot of him. The sparkiness, the attitude, the determination to win, and the cockiness. That was who Chuck Carr was. And being a young fan, you just kind of love the name because we loved playing with Carr toys at the time, right? You could relate to that, but just watching this guy just be speedy on the bases when you don't really understand the game at that age, and he was my favorite player growing up. Then there's Jeff Conine, of course, being Mr. Marlin. He was always doing fundraise events that I would attend, and you got to meet him. The 97 team was really fun. That was a fun year. I went to a lot of regular season games, not a playoff game. Then the couple years after to follow were really miserable. I think behind Cliff Floyd in 98, 99, then Preston Wilson, 99, 2000, until he was traded in, I think, 01. And then we get Juan Pierre, and Luis Castillo is still here. My best memories of baseball was the electricity of 2003. I hope you get to experience a home playoff game, if not a World Series victory. But there's just something about playoff baseball atmosphere that changes your life. Every pitch, every hit matters. Now, not even in a struggling team, but even last year, a couple innings go by and no one's gotten a hit, or there's been a couple hits, you take it for granted. Playoff baseball, the feeling is just different. So my best experience was 2003.
2003. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I've watched the highlights, like I was saying. I believe it was in the divisional series, NLDS against the San Francisco Giants. That would have been just electric to witness in
Dude,
person.
it was. And I'll remember my seats. It was right. My friend and I scalped tickets to that game. It was the game 3 of the division series. It was best of 5. We lost one in San Francisco. We won the next and won the first one coming in. So you're going into that game with positivity as fans. I had bought and scalped tickets. We were actually sitting in handicap seats because we didn't know the difference, and someone sold us handicap seats. So I remember jumping up and down for joy, hugging my friend, and building. That even solidified some friend relationships that I still have, meeting people at those games. So overall, there is nothing like that. The Jeff Conine catching the ball and just chucking it in. We were all like, oh my God, oh my God. And then jumping up and down as Pudge held the ball in the air. It was a magical time. I get
Memories that
goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, it's memories that last a lifetime. It's a defining moment in your life. And as a Marlins fan, now somebody that didn't grow up in South Florida and wasn't able to, go to the games as often, but still followed this team religiously as a kid. Like my mom had this Sirius XM radio, and because MLB TV, I wasn't, you had to pay
Right.
for the whole year. Sometimes there'd be the free game of the day, and if there wasn't, I'd go to the radio and like just sit there and listen. Glenn Geffner and Kyle Seeloff, and so listening to those voices brings back a lot of memories of me as a kid following the team. The first series I went to, it was down in Arizona. It was 2016, and the Marlins played a 3-game series, and my dad took me to all 3 games, me and my brother and him. And Justin Bour hit a grand slam, go ahead grand slam. I love that team. Like, that 2016 team is really special to me personally, even though they didn't win. Like, they didn't win, go to the playoffs. They were competitive for most of the season, and I got to see Jose Fernandez pitch, and that was awesome to see. All my favorite players back then, even Ichiro, who my dad really really loved, was Ichiro, and following his journey to 3,000 hits. It was a really special. So that 2016 for me is one of the big seasons as a Marlins fan.
Yeah, Jose was a great kid. I had a lot of discussions with him, and he was really that smile that you saw on TV or when he pitched. He was the same way in person when you would speak to him away from the game. He would legit light up the room with enthusiasm, and I teared up a little bit as you were discussing it because you remember those conversations and how he treated the game. But I'm happy for you that you got to experience that live and seeing him live because although he passed too early, he really left his mark on this fan base as being here for us. And you never know what could have happened. Maybe they would have been able to extend him. He turned Scott Boras, being the jerk that he is, had turned down some contracts for Jose. But I can't really get into those. It's kind of behind the scenes knowledge. But Scott Boras turned them down and didn't insure Jose, so his family was left with a big burden. But that was a good time. Good times watching him play, and
Oh yeah.
I'm happy that you got to see it.
No, me too. It was, especially considering that was the season that he ultimately ended up passing away. To be able to see him pitch live at least once was really special. And you said it, just a great personality. I had a podcast episode about a month ago where I went through my favorite Marlins of all time, not the best Marlins, just who I loved watching, who I do love watching. And Jose is right up there because not only the type of pitcher he was and how electric he was, but you look at his story, coming here from the U.S., the way he literally jumped out of the boat to save a woman who happened to be his own mother. I mean, it's great stories, and
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I don't think a lot of Marlins fans will ever forget. Is that time and the legacy that he left, for sure.
And you got to understand why the team can't celebrate what he was to the franchise. I mean, the end kind of will ruin his chance of that happening. But as the people that can remember him, we can share our stories with him and say how great he was and how he could have been. And may he rest in peace.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Transitioning now into hopefully a little more of a
Happy.
happier topic. Um, we'll take a look back at, the last few years. What is something that stood out to you in terms of change that is positive? Is it the uniforms? Is it the, hopefully going back to the throwbacks last season? Is it any particular players? Like for me, I would say Sandy Alcantara has been that steady force. In terms of all this change, what is something positive that you can take away?
You know, change needs to happen to get to the ultimate outcome. I love the new uniforms. I love the color orange. So this is actually the old logo. They don't have a new plush hat with the new one. So I wear this one. I do love the new logos. I wish they would have always went back to the original and just changed it to Miami instead of Florida. I think any fan would because the teal was important. Um, uh, I'm happy with some changes in the stadium. It used to look like a amusement park with the thing in the middle, the statue. Many liked it. I was one that didn't. So when they got rid of it, I wish it was replaced by something and there is a home run celebration in some sort in our ballpark. But that was a good change. And, I don't want to stick up for the owner, but I'm going to say this. When he needed to invest money in the team, we saw an owner, actually invest in the team to help them win. Um, he did sign Sandy as far as the players are concerned. I look at this franchise now as Jazz's team from the position standpoint, and Sandy, of course, he's in the dugout and in the locker room with them or clubhouse every day. He is still your pitching leader. He has been the face of the franchise. He was extended to be the face of the franchise by this ownership, which had never happened in the past, except for the Jose contracts. But no pitcher had ever been offered that type of extension. Um, the owner tried signing some free agents. It didn't work out. And you see that investment in the team. And you know what? I believe that last year was a good year for us. It was a lucky year for us. It was very exciting. 2020, you go back to that year, and uh, you know fans of any sport or people in general were scared, and baseball during the summer was a way to get the entertainment out of it. And this team performed for us. No name players like Daniel Castano. Um, I'm forgetting their names already, but you had the guy who was on one of the Olympic speed skating teams playing
Oh yeah.
second base. Just good stories of kids stepping up into a spotlight, and they were scared too. They had to quarantine on trips and whatnot, and how the Marlins. The Marlins were the first, and that'll be in memory forever. The Marlins were the first team to catch the bug, and it took the first couple weeks to get the team back, and just that was a magical season. At least we got the ability to watch it on TV and win a playoff series. As long as they count that Dodgers ring, that playoff did count for us. So that's a good memory. Following the players and their growth and development, guys like DLC from 2021, he's a stud. Jazz, his growth and setbacks and trying to overcome them. As a fan, you got to always root for him to get back to the game instead of complaining that he's always injured. Just keep cheering him on so he can produce for us. And the pitching staff, Pablo was a great pitcher. We mentioned Sandy, Eddie Cabrera, the growth on him, then the setbacks. Trevor Rogers, 2021 All-Star season. We hope he can return to that form sometime. But overall, we've connected with these players, and it's been a fun 4 seasons. And you hope that with whatever changes happen, they bring in nice kids like they did then.
And I still believe in the potential for this rebuild to be based around the pitching. The pitching staff is still so talented. You mentioned Sandy. I hope he stays. I hope he is a Marlin for life at this point. You look at the contract, and that worries me because the numbers are going to start kicking in. He's going to be making $17 million next year and the year after, and I think $21 million his final year. That's a lot, for one player. But watching Sandy in 2022, it was must-watch baseball every time he pitched because he could go the distance. You expected him. There was a point when you expected him to go, pitch a shutout. It was that dominant from Sandy Alcantara. And moving forward, I hope he comes back healthy next year and Miami figures out a way to keep him in town. Unfortunately, I don't think that will happen. I don't think he will be around. I don't think Jazz will be around. I think Jazz is on the way out, which sucks because of how much energy, he brings to this team day in and day out. Really one of the faces of the franchise, if not one of the faces of Major League Baseball as a whole, with him being on the cover of the show. Everything about him is marketable. And it sucks to see Miami in a position to be looking to trade him. Again, we just got to wait and see as fans. You mentioned 2020. Quick thing I'll say about 2020 is I went to basic training for the Army in that summer in July. So right when baseball started picking up, I was in basic training, couldn't have our phones. We get the drill sergeants would give us little updates or whatnot. And I graduated basic training and I was on my phone. I'm like, I got to catch up on all of this. So I'm like, baseball's happening now. It's a 60-game season. And I'm looking at the standings and I'm like, Miami Marlins are like 2 games away from clinching a wild card. And I'm like, what? What is going on here? And I was able to, they timed up perfectly where I was able to watch the playoff series against the Cubs. And, for all intents and purposes of, is it legitimate or not? 2020 is a big asterisk, but the emotions it brought were not, and watching Sixto and us, go in and sweep the Cubbies. And it was awesome, and 2023 was just as awesome, being able to see the comeback kids and Bell and Berger lead this team to the playoffs. Sometimes it's not the result that matters, it's the journey. And being a Marlins fan is certainly a journey. And one of these days, it's going to end up in the result of a World Series. That's my hope.
Yeah, I mean, you look at franchises that throw money everywhere, sign great players for other teams, like the Mets. They haven't won a World Series, and they talk all this BS. They're fans. They haven't won since 1986. That's my age. That's 38 years. They haven't won a World Series. So I don't want to fall into that realm. I know it's been 20, what is it, 21 years, seasons now. It'll be 21 seasons since we won a World Series. I just wish last year we got to the playoffs, like a home playoff game, and it was structured a little differently, because that would have been an amazing atmosphere. This ballpark gets so loud for people who have been to the WBC and those games. They know it. But that place could get really loud, and it would have been nice and will be nice when the Marlins get there to a home playoff.
It will be nice because it will happen. I have confidence it's going to happen.
And
last year was – yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned the backbone of the team being the pitching moving forward. It will be the pitching moving forward, with or without Sandy. We'll see. I'm in a little bit of agreement with you of, will he be here? Will he not? I don't think he will either, but hopefully he is. But you got Yuri coming back when he does from Tommy John. You got that Max Meyer showed what he could do, and he'll hopefully be called up again. And then you, of course, have Weathers. You've seen him and what Mel's done with him, but you also have Noblemeyer, who's going to come up eventually in the next couple of years, and that kid's going to be lights out. So it's very promising in the pitching, and that's how it should be, because you see teams with great star players, but if they don't have the pitching, you can't win the game.
They say grow the arms, buy the bats. It starts with developing the pitching, and they got a ton of it right now. And that is hopefully what it will carry this rebuild forward. You hope that there isn't any major injuries anymore. Like Yori Perez comes back stronger than ever, because, man, he is so special. But you look at a rotation, another guy, you mentioned Noblemeyer, Thomas White, who is right up there, big left-hander, right up there in terms of stuff, elite talent in the lower levels of the minor leagues. You could be looking at a rotation where you have Max Meyer, Ryan Weathers, if he keeps this up, Noblemeyer, Thomas White. I mean, these guys are elite. Like, it's going to be special.
Doesn't that just make you smile knowing you have these kids inside your organization, soon to be ready to show what they can do on the major league level? It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, and this is probably going to be the most excited I've been for a draft. I usually pay attention, kind of see who we get and read it up a couple weeks before. But right now, I know the not desperation, but the importance of hitting on this draft, especially with a new scouting department, is huge. And I'm excited. I'm excited to track and keep following guys that we got in the Arias trade. As much as I was frustrated, Martorella, Marcy, like these guys look like they can hit. Dylan Head, 3 for 4 the other day. So there is hope. It might not translate to the field right now, but there's a lot of hope to be looking forward once you kind of strip away at the frustration.
Yeah, and you got to cheer these kids on, because they're going to be here. So you really hope that they develop them well. This is a very important draft. I think one of the major problem with the former regimes, whether it was Kim or Derek Jeter, was they put people in place, or Jeter had put people in place that didn't know how to analyze and scrub teams or whatnot. So, you saw a lot of first-round picks either didn't make it up, or we traded them away because we didn't expect them to make it up. So you got to hit on your draft picks. This is a strange year for us in draft, because it's not a top 5 pick, I don't believe, because we made the playoffs last year. We're going to be in the teens. So, mid-teens, it's going to be you just hope they get someone good who they can bring up and make it and make their presence known in the next couple of years.
Well, before we get out of here, just about a half hour, I think that's a good point. Go ahead and promote your podcast, Let's Get Louder Pod.
Yeah, the hashtag Let's Get Louder LMS podcast is available on all podcasting forms. I also have a YouTube channel. Just search at Let's Get Louder. And of course on social media, LoudMIAMIFan. I love interacting, although sometimes I don't see eye to eye with a lot of fans, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. We all want one thing, and that's a World Series or a competitive team to go into the playoffs. So we're all cheering for the same thing. And I basically, in some episodes, I review what my experience had been over the years. And then some other episodes, I review what's going on with the franchise, although I hate having to speak negatively about them in some cases. As a fan, my opinion matters, and so does yours. And I hope to, or I have been interviewing other fans on the hashtag Louder, Let's Get Louder LMS podcast to really pick the brains and get to know how they became fans of baseball too. So thank you for having me today.
Yes, thanks for coming on. As always, this podcast is available for listening if you listen on Apple or Spotify, and then the YouTube channel. A lot of people like going to the YouTube channel. So if you do, consider subscribing. Why not subscribe and share, guys? Share the podcast. It's a rough season, but I'm going to keep doing the pod. I love doing it. Love talking about this team. And as always, let's go fish.